now seamlessly run into a panel discussion which is headed up by Carolin, who's the Raw Material Innovation Analyst at Fashion for Good. They are going to be looking at bio-based solutions for the fashion industry, a one-off season trend, or a here-to-stay and scale. So please put your hands together. I think Dana is nearly about to join us. So welcome to the stage.
Perfect. Yes, I can see Dana is ready, so come up on stage. But I'm going to quickly introduce myself as well. So as mentioned, I'm from Fashion for Good. I don't know if everybody is aware of what we do. So just very briefly, we are an innovation platform that's scouting for different innovations within the textile and apparel sector in general, together with our global brand partners. And then we try to help scale those up and get them implemented so that all of you can access them hopefully soon. And yeah, one of our innovation areas are obviously biomaterials, which is the topic of today's session, and how they are implemented within the global fashion brands today. So I have a very knowledgeable panel today on stage with me, who's going to discuss what biomaterials can be already utilized today, but also what still needs to happen within the wider supply chain to make those really accessible. So warm welcome, please, for Dana Noble, who's the Senior Sustainability Specialist for Footwear and Accessories at PVH Tommy Hilfiger, for Rebecca Kelley, who's the European Product Marketing Manager at Woolmark, and to Oliver Dorn, who's the Material Specialist for Textile Innovations at On. Hello, everyone. So yeah, let's get right into it. Maybe for Dana and Oliver, first to you, since you work specifically at one fashion brand only, PVH and On. So how are your companies planning to defossilize, to use the term that Michael used yesterday, your material supply? So how are you trying to minimize your reliance on virgin fossil fuels when it comes to materials? And also, what role do biomaterials play in that plan? Maybe Oliver, if you want to start that off.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us and me. We conclude under the bucket of renewable materials, recycled materials, so circularity is a very big focus of the brand at the moment. But of course also bio-based materials as well as carbon captured and utilization materials. For us at the moment, as I said, circularity is really the main focus. So we look a lot into advanced recycling methods, making sure that in the future we are able to recycle our own industry's waste and becoming independent from, for example, packaging waste streams as a feedstock. However, biomaterials or bio-based polymers will play a huge role as well. For example, for materials where we don't have recycled feedstocks available in the near future, but also because for some of them we see they are really a pinnacle sustainability or a pinnacle sustainable material compared to even recycling methods.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe Dana, also, if you want to add up how PVH is tackling it, but also obviously since your focus area is footwear, are there differences already to those materials when it comes to textiles?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the materials that are used in apparel, they're usually spun, woven, knitted, so they want to move, they want to flex, they're not being dragged on the ground. You're not going to take your t-shirt and rub it on the ground behind you. And so with footwear, we have different materials, but also different quality metrics that we're looking at. And so that adds an added layer of difficulty when trying to find more sustainable alternatives and divert our dependence away from petroleum and synthetic materials and towards renewable and bio-based. And so we have, I guess, two different areas that we're focusing on. So we look at our recycled materials as well as our bio-based. And so echoing what Ollie was saying, really, what are our options? How can we grow and exceed all of the options for all of the components within our footwear specifically?
Yeah, no, very valid points. Rebecca, you obviously within your role at Woolmark aren't just working with one brand, but with multiple ones. So how have you seen also over the last year the change within the industry and also maybe with how the brands are coming to work towards with wool, since this is a natural fiber, now getting rid of maybe synthetic ones? Maybe is there a renewed interest to also using those older, more known fibers?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting one. And as Dana said, you know, the apparel products are slightly easier than some of the more complex products. And I think I would say sort of in the last 20 years, wool really captured consumer awareness with the with Smart Wool, with Icebreaker, and then Rafa coming in 2014. It was really a pinnacle moment. And wool is really in every outdoor store now as a base layer. And then we saw it sort of move into into, more complex product in technical outerwear and in footwear, and processing innovation really enabled wool to, meet modern needs and consumer expectations. And then we saw this shift into a real specific need to make, less impact on the planet. And albeit the message around wool was lovely, it was health, wellness, natural, it wasn't good enough anymore. And wool was starting to be a hindrance in some of these products that really relied on the technical capability of the synthetic fibers. And now we're seeing coming around further with the development of novel biomaterials that are actually allowing wool to come back in to the dynamic, which is exciting, and we're able to see, the dynamic functionality of wool and the tactility playing against, the technical functionality that these products need. So it's an exciting time for wool, and it's exciting time for brands that are interested in using wool alongside more technical fibers.
Yeah, no, interesting points. Maybe also there to hear how On and PVH are using wool. Are you also trying to play with those performance aspects, or how are you handling this, Dana? How does it look at PVH?
From a footwear perspective, we're not using that much wool from a performance attribute, but I do recognize that there are a lot of benefits there, and I think it's something that we should be looking into.
Yeah, interesting. And Oliver?
Yeah, we do use wool in a couple of products, especially, as you mentioned, for the outdoor community, which is a customer group that is really interested in these special properties that wool can offer in terms of its functionality. And I do agree with Rebecca that novel biomaterials can actually help wool to get into more technical applications in the future and overcome some of its inherent weaknesses.
Yeah, you just mentioned it, that there obviously are some weaknesses when it comes to more those novel biomaterials. I think we all are aware that there can be shortcomings when it comes to the performance, but also the supply chain fit. But we also heard here, obviously, yesterday and today, that there are materials that maybe are already ready or can be utilized within the supply chains of today. So maybe also, Oliver, how do you see which materials, when it comes to a timeline and on, are already used today, and what biomaterials maybe only we will see in the future or further ahead?
Yeah, I think a very interesting example of how On uses biomaterials, and not only biomaterials, but also envisions a circular future, is Cyclone. It's a program that we've launched 2 years ago, where we rent out our shoes to our customers. So they would return them back to us at the end of the use phase, and we are able to recycle them. And in these shoes, actually, we use a biomaterial. It's a monomaterial product, all made in the same polymer family, so that we can recycle it back into new parts. Outside of the current Cyclone program, we are definitely also looking into other biopolymers. Here, the focus is really on drop-in solutions at the moment to replace polymers that we think or we believe that there will be a massive recycling stream in the future, so that we don't kind of jeopardize our efforts on circularity by introducing more and more new polymers. However, also proteins or PHAs are novel biomaterials where we see very interesting niche applications in the future. So proteins, for example, as a nice sparing partner for wool, potentially, or for PHAs due to their marine biodegradability as an interesting microfiber mitigation strategy in the future.
Interesting, very interesting. Is it similar at Tommy or at PVH, or what materials do you see already utilized now?
Yeah, so we've started using our biomaterials in our footwear in 2020. So my colleague Nicolo and I actually have another session later today at 2:30 where we go through, discuss the history of biomaterials in Tommy Hilfiger footwear, where we were, where we're going, and where we'd like to go. So I think I'll save my answer for there and give us some more time for other questions.
So please all join for that session later. So that will be interesting to know how footwear is handling those topics. But yeah, Rebecca, obviously within your expertise at Woolmark, you obviously also maybe know a bit how those materials are evolving and which ones are ready, but you obviously also have your own label. So how are you handling scouting for new materials, and what are maybe also difference from a smaller brand to those bigger fashion brands like On and PVH, and how are you scouting for novel solutions?
Great question. It's a real challenge. I mean, from a Woolmark perspective, yes, we're seeing things like PA11, and I've been working closely with Circle Sportswear, who launched their Supernatural sneaker, and we were really looking looking at what was available to create a product for disassembly where the upper was compatible and the bottom unit was compatible, and it's really tough and it's taken a long time, and they are really leading in that. And then from my own perspective, I'm developing a kids footwear brand, and with that sort of a product, I don't have the same performance rigors of, say, a sports running shoe like Circle or On, and I have more flexibility to be able to use interesting materials such as natural fiber welding's Pliant, which I'm using on the outsole, and then I'm able to use additive knitting technology to be able to develop an upper with wool and cotton. What was interesting was Simon's session this morning with Sasha on Hyosung's development in finding bio-based options for elastane, and this is a real challenge for us because this really inhibits our ability to use wool more widely because it's used in, seamless product, for instance, which is an exciting area for wool, but without, a better case elastane, it's really problematic because it essentially contaminates the product. They have to go into separate waste streams, and of course they can't be separated easily. So yeah, looking for drop-in products where we can, and I think it's great being at a show like this and being closer to the tier 4, tier 5 suppliers and becoming more aware of the feedstock and how that's playing into the materials that are starting to come onto market. That knowledge and understanding is really key for a fashion brand.
Yeah, no, very interesting points. And I think there often is a discussion around drop-ins and more novel ones. And I believe they all maybe have a fit. But yeah, I think that timeline on planning out which ones can be utilized when is very important. But yeah, as we see, there are ones that are maybe available and that are already scaling up and that could be utilized. But if we look maybe in stores and at the market, there still aren't so many collections out there. So obviously, there are still hinderers and there are still problems and there are maybe still things that need to happen within a brand, but also within the wider supply chain, which is obviously something that you all are working towards as well. I see you nodding, Dana. So what is it that you're struggling with also? What are you working on a daily basis to get those materials implemented, and what needs to happen at a brand and the supply chain?
Yeah, so I guess I can narrow it down to a couple of key areas. I think first is especially for footwear, it's a performance piece. And so we need it to be able to bend. Every time you take a step, your foot is moving. And so your shoe needs to be able to move with you. And so we need to make sure that the materials we're replacing our current or existing materials with are able to perform in the same way. We need them to breathe. Our feet get very hot. Nobody likes stinky shoes. How do we avoid that? We also need the materiality to be aesthetically appealing, to have the good hand feel. So we have a lot of attributes on top of what we might expect in the apparel industry. On top of that, we need to have a good marketing story. There's a price difference between standard synthetics and biomaterials, and so we need to be able to talk about it. But as we saw this morning with the Green Claims Directive, that's changing how we can talk. What is it that we need to talk? What kind of traceability and chain of custody do we have? And when you look at the chain of custody and traceability standards for example, recycled materials, it's very clean, it's very streamlined, and we don't have that level of consistency within our biomaterials. And then at the end of life, what do we do with our products? I think there's a lot of focus on how can we build better, but also how can we destroy better? How can we get a better end of life? And I think what Ollie's been doing with the cyclone and the reverse supply chain, is a really interesting way to accommodate for that.
Yeah, no, valid points. Rebecca, to you, same question maybe. What do you think needs to happen still within brands in the supply chain to implement those materials?
Yeah, I mean, personally speaking, from the development work I'm doing for Brightland, you have to take a lot of development risks. We're having to ensure that product looks really good because, sustainability isn't going to sell it. So the biomechanics and the design aesthetic is really important. But yeah, you're concerned about, that coming to market and that being a product market fit at that price point. So no, these things are definitely challenging. But yeah, we have to take those risks and we have to forge our way ahead. And I think, collaboration and, certainly when we think about, differentiated products and not sort of commodity technology partners like Natural Fiber Welding or Belena, for instance, are really supporting us being able to tell the story and the people that are involved in bringing this exciting new product to market.
Yeah, interesting points. Oliver, from your side and at on-sites, how are you handling that internally and how are you trying to get those materials ready?
I think the most important points like performance, price, aesthetics have been mentioned already. So maybe I can add two more very specific things that I encounter in my daily conversations. First of it being the concept of mass balancing. I think as a brand, we have the chance and the responsibility also to create demand of these biomaterials right now. And mass balancing is, for me, a very interesting concept of doing that and not having to wait for massive investments to happen, for facilities to be built up, but really using existing and efficient facilities for producing biomaterials. And I see that this concept of mass balancing is still not well understood everywhere internally in the brands, but also how we communicate it to the customer is an issue. I think that is the most important.
The most important, mass balance. I know that's also often a discussed topic, so maybe also we have questions in the end, so you can already prepare for that. But very interesting points, all of you, and I think in general, seeing how fashion brands are implementing those more novel materials is an exciting point, a difficult one. Obviously, that's not just on the brands. There need to happen further things in the wider ecosystem and within our industry. So maybe also to round this up before we open the panel for questions, what would you say in a few sentences, like the key milestone or leverage that needs to happen within our whole industry, not just on brand side, to make this change to biomaterials happen? So Rebecca, I'm going to start with you here.
So I think biomaterials is just part of the puzzle, and we need to be careful that we don't put too much emphasis on it making the big change that we need. We cannot stick with the same business models, overproduction, overconsumption, and just switch materials around. I also think a lot of work needs to happen with defossilizing the supply chain as well. I think a lot of wins can be made there. So it's super important, and it's a tool in the box, but we need to be careful that we don't think that it's going to save us. So yeah, and I think, we talk about how to move forward. I think collaboration and partnerships, and I know it's been spoken about a lot already, but it's true. Getting closer to the source of your materials and understanding is vital.
Yeah, definitely. That's obviously why also events like this are great, to make those partnerships and to get those conversations going. So definitely interesting points. Oliver, what would you say is the key thing that we need to work on?
One thing is, I think, also legislation, regulation, making sure we have a clear roadmap for the whole industry, how we are going to evolve and how we are going to establish a level playing field for biomaterials or renewable materials in general and petrochemistry. And then also, I also want to mention this collaboration point that you brought up already. It's astonishing how few brands are here at this conference, I think, because we do have to engage with tier 5+ suppliers in the future if we want to make this change happen. And I think there needs to be more awareness across the whole supply chain, even in the brands, for that topic.
Yeah, definitely. Also very ambitious to already try to work with tier 5. I know some brands don't even have tier 4 set yet, so that's an ambitious goal, but important. So nice to see. Dana, from your side, what would you say?
Yeah, I think building on both, I think we as an industry really need to align, because I think what we're saying at PVH, what Ollie's saying at On, what Rebecca's saying at Woolmark, I think there's probably differences between what are our expectations, what is it that we're looking for, what kind of traceability and certification is it that we need, what kind of performance aspects do we need, and I think we need more visibility into the industry, and we need to align better as an industry so that we can tell the biomaterial suppliers exactly what needs to be focused on, because currently, it feels like we're all having separate conversations and we're all working in different directions. And I think that's part of being a scaling industry that we're working within. But I think one way that we can really enable success is to make sure we're all on the same page. We know what our priorities are, and we're all working in the same direction instead of everyone going in a different way.
Yeah, no, very, very important point. So thank you all so much for your knowledge and for sharing that. So I'm going to open it up here to the floor and see if there's also any questions. I believe we have a microphone going around, so just raise your hand if there's anything you would like to ask the people on stage here. Yes.
Hey, very interesting. I just wondered if you guys could speak a bit more about like the circular collection and like actually recycling things at the end of life, because I know it's obviously a super tricky topic, but just fascinated to hear how you manage that at such big brands.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I've got the circle and then my own project, which is in kids' footwear, and we have really purposely built that product with biospheric circularity in mind. And, you know, with kids' footwear, it's a high turnover product. Often the product isn't worn through before it's discarded, and there's a real stigma against, you know, second-hand shoes. So we really wanted to create a product that was fit for purpose, that was 100% natural, and we found some great solutions, but there are some challenges. For instance, the thread that attaches the upper and the outsole, and then the very fine thread that allows us to put the toe and the heel reinforcements. We're just really struggling to, you know, find that in, you know, a fine linen or a hemp. We're stuck with the polyester, and also the manufacturers just don't want or are really frightened to work with other options in case it doesn't work and the fault rate is high. So again, these are just challenges, and of course the glue as well. Even though it's water soluble, you know, it's still not quite there at the 100%. So yeah, it's tough.
Definitely. Both of you as well, maybe. How are you tackling circularity?
Yeah, I mean, one approach is obviously monomateriality, what I mentioned before with Cyclone, but this is obviously a niche application. So for broader for the broader portfolio, we also have to look into disassembly solutions, for example, especially for footwear. It's super important. And if you look into the Cyclone program right now, we have actually launched a shoe that we will disassemble bottom unit from the upper. So this is an important topic. Then what you mentioned, the reverse logistics, is super important and something we have a big task force working on. So yeah, all these bits and pieces have to get a lot of attention in the brands, and yeah, as you mentioned, also in collaboration in between brands.
Yeah. Anything to add on from your side?
Yeah, we also have a team working specifically on circular design strategy that I'm a part of. So we've partnered with industry organizations specifically on footwear as well as apparel to ensure that we're enabling circular design, circular production, and end of life. And I'm a bit of a broken record, so apologies to anyone that I've had meetings with, but I'm going to repeat myself for the upteenth time today. But we really need to be developing these biomaterials that have end-of-life opportunities at scale, especially when working with companies like PVH, where I think the previous quote was a pretty big ship, quote unquote. That was your own terminology. And so we really need things that work for all of our materials. And so we've had some luck with companies that can operate for foot recyclability, which is really great. But I think there's a really big gap in the market in terms of end-of-life opportunities for our bio-based materials, especially when they're combined with PUs. And so, again, that's a huge ask that I think we all have to the industry to help collaborate and come together and find a solution that works at a scale and a price point that enables growth and development at the scale I think we would all like to see.
Yeah, thank you. Does that answer the question? Perfect. Then, yeah, I see the hand risen there as well.
This is a really fascinating discussion. I've been in the bio-based arena for 40 years, and first time I'm hearing all of you coming together. I have a fundamental problem at my home. Closets are overfilled. We can't seem to stop buying, and yet we don't know what we have in the closets. I think this overconsumption could be one solution that all of us can be working together, and particularly the brand owners, you know, pushing products, cheap products, and the like, that I just don't see an end. And we ship all these used clothes to Africa or wherever, and they end up in dumps. And so I think taking responsibility and starting with the entire value chain and in brand owners in particular. I wonder who's doing anything about that. I hear one example of shoes being rented. Why not rent clothes, right? You know, and if I'm done with it, send it back to you and get a refund, and buy one when I need one, as opposed to filling my closets.
Yeah, it's such an important point. It's the elephant in the room, and I think cost per wear is a really important aspect. The more we can wear something, the more we reduce the impact of that product, and that can be, you know, a real substantial win. So yeah, brands have a responsibility, and consumers can also be doing more. Yeah, we do. We need to stop overproducing, and I think these subscription models are certainly there in a niche way. In kids wear, for instance, again, where you've got that high turnover, and we're seeing, you know, a burgeoning sort of second-hand market. Some challenges coming in there with, you know, these clothes that have been around for a long time and probably possess lots of chemicals, which are going to be banned going forward. So from a recycling perspective, that's challenging. But yeah, you raise a really good point.
Yeah. Someone from you also wants to?
Yeah, so we've actually looked extensively into this. We have an entire team specifically looking at decreasing rental options, secondhand markets, mapping out our supply chains and our end-of-life chains. So when we take our waste, where does that go? And then it's sorted, and then where does it go? And then it's sorted again, and where does it go? So there's an entire ecosystem and economy of waste, where the goal is, to your point, prevent those landfill productions. And then I really wanted to address your specific request on the rental market. And while we do see success in areas like the UK and the Americas, when tested in the EU regions, the suppliers are just not that interested. We haven't seen a lot of success in that. And so we can make it available, but are consumers actually interested in that rental market? And what we've found for our business is that they're not. And so we found a lot more success partnering with other companies in the resale market. But then we get into the logistics of the reverse supply chain. So we sell our products. How do we make sure that we get them back? How do we make sure it's very easy and accessible to all of our consumers? And then we also then have to go through the same thing of sorting, movement, et cetera. So I don't think that there's a very clear, straightforward answer. But ultimately, consumers also need to change their direction. I think we need to change that mindset.
Yeah. Last remarks from your end. We only have a few seconds, but yeah.
Yeah, it is a very valid question. Thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, Cyclone is just the beginning for us. We've started with one shoe. Now we have 3 shoes in that program. And we definitely want to expand that program across other product categories. That's for sure. So yeah, I think also from a business case perspective, with biomaterials, recycled materials getting a must more and more for our customers, these materials are getting more expensive, so the products will get more expensive. So I believe also that a rental business case in the future will be much more interesting than one-off sell.
Perfect. I hope that answers the question. If not, we are all, I think, still here today, so grab us when you can, because our time is up here. But yeah, thank you also so much for sharing your knowledge and your insights. I believe everybody found it very valuable. And yeah, handing it over to the next person now.